Our next speaker is Mary Lou Gutscher. Mary Lou it all started with Ayn Rand and Atlas Shrugged. She first became an activist for liberty in the late 70s with the Ontario and Canadian Libertarian parties, and later as co-founder of Unparty, now called the Freedom Party. Over the years, she has been director of World Conferences for Liberty International, a coordinator and teacher at Liberty and Entrepreneurship Camps in Eastern and Western Europe, Africa, and Central America, and a founding advisor with what is now known as the Institute for Liberal Studies. A serial entrepreneur and mentor, Mary Lou currently heads up the Penticton Freedom Group in British Columbia and is part of the Canada-wide Freedom Rising Network. The topic of her day is the freedom movement in Canada, then and now. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Mary Lou.
Who else started with Ayn Rand? Oh, come on, there have to be people who started with Ayn Rand. Of course, Maxime, I recognize that right away. I'm an incurable advisor, so even when people don't ask, I give advice. So, Maxime, on the issue of simplifying economics and inflation. Back in the early 80s, the Morty Shulman show on City TV, I don't know if anybody here even knows about that show. He was an interviewer. He was an elected politician with the NDP, but he was a financial advisor. Well, he was an investment advisor. And every year they had a show where they were inviting people to take a shot at Morty. So I put in an application. I'm basically living hand to mouth, involved with the Libertarian Party and the Unparty, the formation of the Unparty, defined or redefined. And my proposal was to talk about inflation and how he is aware what causes it, supports it, and gets rich by using it as an investment tool. So in the show, I was on the second section. There was a 2-hour show. In the first part, a woman who was railing against the Cancer Society was saying, if you work with them, it's like putting a nail in your coffin. But she didn't realize that her hand was not visible on the camera. And I thought, that's what I need. I need a tool because I know where the camera is. It's on my face. So I had a 10, which was the last amount I had to my name till I got another paycheck, and I asked for change, and I got a dollar bill, in dollar bills. So on the show, when I was talking about inflation, I said what it does is, and I started ripping the dollar bill. Morty Shulman jumped off his chair, dropped to the floor, said it's illegal to deface the currency, and the producer was going like this. There's your example of how to explain inflation. What I'm going to do is just share with you my opinion of what's going on today in the freedom movement and where we are in that. I'd love to reminisce about all the people I've met over the years, but I think it's more important to look at what's happening now. Where are we? Is the freedom movement dying? Is it growing? Are people aware, awake, and action-oriented or not? So my own story is that I had children very young, and when I finally went out to work in the business world, I ended up working in an environment where I was also working with university students. I lived in Kitchener-Waterloo, university students, evening shifts. I was with the kids during the day, my husband was there in the evening, and so I was listening to the students, and I was so excited about ideas. You know, when you're at home raising kids, the coffee clatches are all complaining about husbands or, problems with whatever, shopping, the kids, and the level of conversation was so stimulating. I asked my friends to give me a list of books I should read to start educating myself. And my best friend was the only one that gave me the list, and it was an extensive list from Emile Zola to Ayn Rand. And I didn't know where to start, so I decided, set the rule in my head, whichever is the first book I see is the first one I'll read. It turned out to be Atlas Shrugged. 1,197 pages in a pocket book that was celebrating an anniversary publication. So it all began with Ayn Rand, with me first thinking, I think that I'm an Eddie Willers. Eddie Willers was the heroine's assistant, and he was intelligent enough to recognize what she was trying to do and always made resources available to her to be able to keep the trains running. So the Taggarts ran the railroad, and then I realized, oh my God, I've got a brain. I have a brain. And I began to see concepts and understand them that I had never even known existed in the world before. So I think that we have gone through this awareness process with most of the Canadians out there, and that means the way it shows up is through the activism that we have right now, of course, but also with the number of people who are becoming homeschoolers, with the number of people who are noticing that things are not as they were. They aren't as they thought they were either. And so they're beginning to question if they haven't already started taking the next steps. So they get their news from various channels, but now they are also following bloggers who are questioning the standard media and providing them with different information. And the old pain, pleasure, personal value system comes into place. Am I in pain with what's going on? Would it please me to change things? There are books available, articles available, podcasts. They've been there before, but not in the same variety of availability that's come through technology. The second part is awakening. Once you realize there's a question in your mind, what do you do? Where do you get information? Well, you know, some of the institutions and individuals that were around when I got started, like Murray Rothbard, well, the Montreal Economic Institute was in there somewhere, not right at the beginning, but Lou Rockwell and so on. They were available then, and most of them are still alive as well, alive at least in terms of their literature and people that are following their ideas. And then new ones have come on board, not just the evolution of their generations and their proteges, but also the establishment of new leaders, new thought leaders. And in terms of your politics, Maxime, I think that you are one of those people, and the fact that you're even in the public environment makes it possible for people to recognize you. So when you first showed up on the scene with the Conservatives, we thought there was hope for the Conservative Party. And the comparison between you and Stephen Harper, I'd have to say, is that you came from the Montreal Economic Institute, and Stephen Harper came from the National Citizens Coalition, a populist movement. And it shows in the policies. It showed in the policies, and it still does. So basically, the awakening is about taking advantage of the sources of information that make sense. The evolution of social media and the censorship capabilities of those in charge of the technocracy have made it near impossible for you to be able to speak truth there if you're only dependent on the major social media, major meaning the ones that have the biggest financial backing and that are parts of the largest profit-making companies. But there are alternatives out there. There are alternatives to YouTube, there are alternatives to Facebook, to Twitter, whatever. Twitter, apparently, we're hoping now that Elon Musk actually is going to keep it free. but that might not happen, so we need to have alternatives there. But there are many alternatives out there. The key one, if you're looking up information that you can't find anymore on Rumble, or on YouTube, is Rumble. And in terms of social media, it's liberty.com, LABRTY.com. The third part is action. One of the things that has been constant throughout the freedom movement is that the bad guys can tell lies and that those lies get believed. But the good guys, let's just call them libertarians for the sake of argument, have to tell the truth. They have to back their assertions with facts. So anytime you're in a debate, for example, in a public debate or in a political debate, the questions are posed in such a way to put you on the spot and make you put in a position to have to prove your position, because the assumption is that the other guys are going to be right. So I like the way you answer questions. I'm using Maxime as the example, but also I have to say for Dr. Amy Wax as well. Where are you? Or she may have left the room. Just straight to the point, absolutely know what they know, and they share what they know, and they share what they believe. And I think that is what is happening now at the grassroots level. People are beginning to say, no more am I going to favor the lesser of the evils. I want the truth. I want to be behind the truth. I want my children and my grandchildren to look at me and ask me, what were you doing during COVID? And have them be proud of what I did. And I'm hoping that is the case with a larger number of Canadians. When I travel, anywhere I go, of course, I engage people in conversation, and I even offer strangers hugs. And it's very interesting, if you have your ear to the ground, to just get an opening to begin a conversation, to have some ready questions available that are not challenging. And one of the ways that I do that is by carrying this I paid cash today for a reason card. If you go to keepcashalive.com, you can have them printed or print them out yourself. And you can also encourage businesses to put up we accept cash signs on their businesses, so that we can we can't necessarily prevent the central bank digital currency, but we can make people aware of the importance of making sure that you can always do commerce, whether or not you prefer to do it through the government avenues. So that, every time I hand that out to a clerk, it's amazing the kind of questions that come up. And if I'm able to meet the owner of an organization, it's amazing how many of them will put a sign up advocating for cash in their businesses. And that just leads me to the bottom line of activism. Each Canadian, each individual can have an impact. And there are a few rules to having an impact. The first one is non-violent non-compliance. We do not comply, and we do not aggress. Just say no. Thank you. That's it. If there are any questions, I'll stick for a couple minutes, but otherwise I'll turn the rest of the time back to Giant. Thank you very much.
Are there any questions?
Thank you for your talk. And what's the situation of the liberty movement in Canada now? How is the Libertarian parties or the think tanks? How are they doing?
Okay, so the parties, the smaller political parties, are struggling. And of all of the parties, like the Freedom Party and the Libertarian Party and the Ontario Party and so on, PPC, the one that Maxime started, has the biggest edge because he was actually in Parliament at the time that people got to know him. The others have not yet achieved even local or regional levels of elections, achieving elections, or provincially rather and municipally, as a party, although some individuals definitely have. The biggest thing is that those parties and the freedom organizations out there, including little ones like Penticton for Freedom, which I coordinate, and the big ones, Freedom Rising, which is a Canadian-wide coalition, they are providing projects that people can get involved in, that are simple for them to get involved in, that have some instructions, some tools for them to make a difference in their communities. And more people are starting to go out and get engaged politically with independent thinking candidates, truth-seeking candidates, whether they are in a political party or not. And I think the hope is that the political party's habit or policy of forcing compliance amongst their members is the thing that has to be torn down. And the only way that can happen is that more people who will stand for election and still speak their mind, risking that they may not get the seat, but always having that platform to speak out.
One quick question then. You were talking about the war on cash and alternative methodologies of transactional and clearinghouse functions. Are you doing anything in terms of electronic methodology across Canada, like Starlink terminals or alternate communication systems that can function as a clearinghouse? Okay, so
I want to talk to you about getting on this Freedom Rising group. We have weekly meetings on Friday mornings on Zoom. And the purpose of that group is to engage with cross-Canada freedom fighters and freedom organizations to create a collaborative environment. So just an example of what happened out of that, Liberty.com was competing with at least 3 other platforms to be the most secure, the most sustainable. And there are organizations that will test websites for their sustainability and their privacy, their protection of your privacy. And they scored in the same levels as most financial institutions in Canada. So that's part of the collaboration. Once you see within a group of activists what they know, what they have going for them, they can collaborate with each other and figure out what's the best way for us to provide tools that everybody needs anyway. So my own situation is that I'm very simplistic about the answer. And I would love it if you'd let me introduce you to that group so that you can discuss that at a higher level. Would that be okay? Okay, great. Thanks for the question, Mike.
This is not a sex or gender question.
It's okay. Even if it is, I'm okay.
Yeah, I tend to have a warrior-like spirit. You know, I'm willing to speak things and take what comes.
Yes.
But what I am surprised at, that some of the leaders in the movement today are women.
Are women.
Are women. Mm-hmm. They're the ones often that are speaking up and saying this is not right. And I can't figure out why that is because you look out for your kids. What is it? And when I think of a woman, I don't think of what a warrior is. That doesn't mean punching somebody or shooting somebody, but it's willing to go out and speak what you have to say and deal with all the crap you have to deal with. Okay,
so 2 parts to that question. In the Okanagan, which is one of the most activist areas in addition to the Cowichan Valley here in BC, there is actually the question posed every single week, where are the men? My opinion on it is that just like creeping centralization, creeping socialism, creeping whatever you want to call monopolization that the federal government here in Canada has been working on, and then leveling it down to the provinces, leveling it down to the municipalities. And I am dealing with the ideology of being able to use technologies instead of people. So it's so these phones, smartphones, and other things like it, the feminist movement, which I am opposed to because it's a group movement as opposed to an individual movement. Women have never had a problem standing on their own in comparison to men for applications for jobs. if they simply use their skills and their expertise as the measuring point. So it looks to me like it is a deliberate demasculating of men, turning them into their own secretaries. And that doesn't mean that women have to be secretaries, but the whole idea that they're expected to manage all of their affairs without an assistant, and that they have to be part of doing the housework and so on, instead of simply, if they can afford it, hiring somebody to help out. It feels to me like that this has been part of a movement, and that now men are afraid to speak out. They're afraid to speak out even with their wives in conversation because they're afraid they won't have sex. Sorry, but that's how I see it. And they're afraid to speak out because of whatever authority they're bowing to make sure they keep their jobs and their incomes coming. And this comes from, in my opinion, it comes from men's innate desire to protect their families. And they feel an obligation to do it. And you often even hear that they don't understand what their wife's talking about when they say, don't you have time to just have a conversation with me? I just have to have a conversation. And of course, women have conversations everywhere they go. We go into the washroom together to do it. And men need to stay focused more so than women do. Women have to use their larger corpus callosums, which allows the neuron connections between both sides of the brain, to manage things and make sure that the base is firm so that men and their families can actually grow from that base. So the difference in our physical being and our psychological being is being undermined, I think, deliberately over time, and it's so incessant that we don't even recognize it's happening. So I don't know if that helps or not. Okay. I think we have to drop it.
Mary Lou, thank you very much.
Yes.